Good afternoon, folks. It's Tuesday afternoon. We are going to take a look at high scores. I'm going to leave the display settings as they are for now because I think the problem is not with the code. The problem is actually with my weird setup. Okay, the various monitors and various cards that are driving the different monitors and SLI, stuff like that. So I'm going to leave that. Hey Slors, how you doing, mate? Nice to see you back. Hope you're well. Is there anything that you'd like to see today, Slors? Or are you quite happy to go with the flow? Okay, for anybody from yesterday's stream that was watching the Steam integration, I actually managed to get it to work in Unreal Engine 5. But for further information, you would need to basically sign up for the Patreon because I've added the files in there, plus the files that you need to add, the code that you need to add, and a link to a working plugin for Unreal Engine 5. Okay? But as I said, I did get it working. So, without further ado, and the other piece of news is that we are only 14 subscribers away from 500, which would be great if I could get it soon. But that's just a little bit of information for you. So what we're going to do today is work on high scores. Now, what we've done with the menu, and we're apparently still running it in standalone mode, right, is we now have a high score widget, right? So I was also having a look at how this is implemented in Steam, because obviously, well, we're going to have two different versions of it, right? We're going to have like a if you're online and an if you're not. Okay? And the way that we're going to calculate the scores, well, we don't really know yet, but we have got a few things that are going to allow it to happen. And that is, one is difficulty, right? And we could actually add something here, which would be score multiplier, and that would be a float. Okay, so we could use that. We are also obviously going to have to save this in our game instance, right? The value that we're currently using for this. And we're going to need two different versions of our scoreboard, because we're going to need an online version or a Steam version and an actual like offline version, right? So we're going to create another widget, and I'm pretty sure, let me just check this in a moment or two. So we'll call this Steam High Scores. Okay. And what I want to do is I do actually want to start up Steam. Okay. And that's all we need to do. And then if we run this in standalone mode, what I want to do is I want to find out if Space Wars has a leaderboard that we can write to. Okay, so we are online here, right? And we're online, obviously Steam came up, right? So if we hit the tab thing, the question is, do we have there's guides, there's community hub, but there's no leaderboards per se, right? Or not that I can see. Okay. Now let's have a look elsewhere. Okay. So it doesn't look like this has. Now let's click on that. Right, now it also doesn't look like this is a link to the game's leaderboards. Right? So I'm going to jump out of here just now, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play about with some code to see if there is somewhere in the code where I can actually get so there's show leaderboard UI. Doesn't work with Steam apparently. Displays the built-in leaderboard. Okay, whatever. Queries a leaderboard for an integer value. Okay. Now, I don't know where this is set up, right? Because obviously I'm thinking that the leaderboard has to be set up in the configuration file. Okay, so your Steam leaderboard is actually referenced within your like engine settings when you build it out, right? So you're automatically, you can't read a leaderboard or get values from a leaderboard, let's say. Right, but what we actually probably want to do here is look for the Steam integration and see what values we have in here. Right. Let's look at Steam. Steam API. So it's get friend, get local Steam, Get avatars, get... Why, thank you, but I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce your name. So I'm sorry about that. Right, so we've got the workshop items, Steam groups, and these are all related to right. Wait a minute. Group info, workshop, shop item details. W Steam high scores. Steam high scores class. That's the widgets, so that's not what we're looking for there. Steam groups. Yeah, everything's fine. I hope things are fine with you. Right, so we're not going to worry about that too much. We haven't got a lot of documentation, and if I'm going to do research on it, I'll do it off stream, and then I'll bring it to bear once I know what sort of things are doing. Now, we can do it with achievements because I have done achievements before, but as I said, you have to set them up in you have to set them up in Steam under your in your game when you're setting up your game, right? Eugene. Okay, Eugene. Nice to meet you. Is there anything you'd like to see, Eugene, me working on? I'm trying to avoid actually doing high scores, but I suppose we're going to have to do it at some point. Right. So basically, if we go back to our main menu, widget, right? And if we select this button, and we won't be doing anything with it yet. And that's not the button, that's the button. We're just doing the hover, so we want the clicked. Okay, and online subsystem. So we'll be doing that, and then we say Steam, and then we do branch off that, right, and just as like a test, we shall test this out. So we shall be doing create widget, and if the online subsystem is on, we'll be doing Steam high scores, and if the online system is off, we'll be doing normal high scores. Okay. So as you can see, we are beginning to integrate Steam, even though I hadn't even thought about it till yesterday. Okay, if you want a little tour, Eugene, I'll let you see the actual menu in operation. And I've still got it in standalone mode. So you can see by my name there, we are online, Steam pops up, everything's good. And our guy does his little things depending on where we are, and I'm guessing that that actually did work, right? But because our widgets are actually blank at the moment, I've set up a tab button to actually get us out there. I think these two things are empty, right? So what we'll do is we shall test it further by actually putting something in this widget, right? So if we bring up this widget, I need to do a little bit on this as well. This sequence graph editor always coming up, and that's because I created an animation before and I basically just stopped using it and deleted it, so now it's continually looking for it. So we'll just bring in a widget here, an image, right, and we'll basically make it full size, and this is just basically so that we can see something, okay, and we'll just pick a image basically, and that one will do. Right, and we'll do basically the exact same thing. So we shall copy that. In fact, we won't do it that way, but we'll do something similar. Right, it's going to come up with that again, which is annoying, but hey ho. Right, and we paste this in, and we'll change this image so that we can see the different images coming up, right? And I can't remember what. I just want an image that's not horrible, so it doesn't hurt my eyes. Right, we'll have a blood spot, what the heck. Right, it doesn't matter, we're going to change them anyway, so it doesn't matter. Right, anyway, so if we hit that, we should get the nice picture here. If our Steam subsystem is being recognised. And once we go just editor only, it won't. Excuse me. So, I'm an idiot. Right? I'm a complete idiot. Because you've got to add these to the viewport. Right, so stop making those dunderhead mistakes, please, Ian. Oh, just gave away my name. Not hard to find out, really. Right, so we can now go to high scores and we get our picture. Right, and if we run it in selected viewport, we get the blood spot. So you can see that it's reacting to whether it's got the Steam subsystem or not. Right? So if Steam is running, it does this. If Steam is not running, it does this. Okay? So basically that gives us access to either our online leaderboard or our offline leaderboard. Okay? And what I should really do at this point is to start doing, or at least splitting up sections of our code. And this is like new game. Okay. So we should really start splitting these up into their component parts to make it a bit clearer. where we need to actually do stuff, right? So like this is options. This will also make it a bit easier for you guys to see. Right, now our scores we actually just did this part for. So what we'll do is we'll move this down, and since this is going to be a little more code involved, we'll move these down at the bottom. And we'll hit C, and we'll say high scores. Are you working on something yourself, Eugene? And this button exit can go here, drag this over here, then drag it over here, then C, and this is exit game. Okay, that. And finally, I'm pretty sure this is credits. Just check. Yep. And we shall just make these that. Okay, that. Right. So now that we've done that part, we can start looking at our high score tables or widgets. And from there as well, we're going to have a look at our high score now. What I'm going to have to do here is we're going to have to be doing this on a per level basis, right? So what I'm going to do is we've got a struct high score, right? And we're going to need a new variable on this, which is going to be difficulty. And we're going to go up, up, and we'll actually, what we'll do is we'll put that at the start, right? And I think what we'll do is we're obviously going to have default high scores to start with, right? So what we'll do is we'll just add in some basically rubbish, right? So that we can actually start displaying something. Now these are only going to get loaded in once, right? And then basically they're going to get added to the save game and then loaded in from the saved game. The only time these are going to be loaded in is the very first time, and if you have 0 high scores at that particular point, right? So we'll do all of these at level 1 except the end one. As I said, this isn't going to really matter. And as you can see from the difficulty, that difficulty should be E difficulty. Okay. So we'll save that. Now if we go back to our data table, you can see these are all set to easy, right? But funnily enough, we should probably do medium for that one, because and now what we'll fill in the rest, right? Apart from the time, right? We'll leave that because I'm not particularly sure how we're going to do that yet, but we'll put 9999. That's kind of your standard. Then we'll put 8765, and apparently I didn't save that. And for this one we'll set this to the second, so we'll say stay indoors at night, and then level complete, yeah, right. So we'll say level complete for everything. And as I said, this is going to give us something to work with when we actually make our individual so we'll say 6565, then we'll say 4347, just making up numbers here guys, doesn't really matter, 3952, right, and that'll do us. Okay, so now that we have something to work with, we can actually build something. Right now, what I'm actually thinking of doing here is like hiding this part and then having like the high score here, right? That's kind of my thoughts on the matter. But we need to build our high score table first. So we're going to open high scores. We're going to delete this image. Then we're basically going to wrap that with a canvas panel. Then we're going to have a vertical box. Right, so we'll basically be changing this to like VB for vertical box, and we're going to set this to a variable so that we can use it in code, right? And then we're going to go to our graph and start actually getting stuff to happen, right? So let's do that, shall we? Let's get stuff to happen. Always good when something happens. Well, that's not strictly always true, but what we're going to do is we're going to get data table. And it's always better to actually get data table row names. Right? Now, this, remember, this is going to come from two different places, right? And it isn't going to come from the data table rows either, right? But I've still got to set this up. This is going to actually come from the game instance, right? Once we've set up our default save game, right? So it's going to be loading it from the save game. Okay. And then it's going to be using either the save game or the game instance. Probably I'll save it in the game instance, but don't know yet, right? So we're going to be using DT high score tables, right? Then we're going to be using a for each loop. Okay. Then we're going to be data. Now if you type data, if you actually scroll straight to the bottom, the very bottom one is going to be get the row, right? So we do that, we also get the high scores from there, right? And then we're going to break our out row. We'll switch that back on. And this is going to give us all of our values, okay? Now, all of these values, we are going to either pass in this struct, or we're going to expose on spawn to our high score line, right? And the easiest way to do it for now is basically to add a variable and say struct score, okay, and it's going to be of the type struct high scores, okay. It's going to be instance editable and expose on spawn. Okay, so once we've done this, it's going to be great, right? But we need to get our this one first, and then we need to see create widget, right? And we're going to create a line. Okay, now you'll notice we've now got this struct score that we can pass in, and we just plug that straight in there. And here we go with the bots. It's always fun. Let me just report them quickly. Report, okay. Done. Right. So these are basically what we're passing in. Right, and we'll basically in a second we'll set this up to basically do its own thing. And now we're going to go to VB score, which is a vertical box, right? And we'll say add child to vertical box. Okay. And the content is going to be our newly created widget of the data for the one high score, right? So if we remember, it's going to do this for every single value in our data table. So it's going to go to 1, it's going to create the widget, add it to the vertical box. It's going to go to the second one, create the widget, add it to the vertical box, so on, so forth. Okay. Now we can quickly get that actually running and being able to view it, because we can get this and we can break it. Okay. And we have our text block, etc. And what we shall do is we'll add one more just to actually prover point, right? Now, as I said, we might never ever use a score, but it gives us something to work with as far as complete. Right, that's fine. Okay, so now we've got that, we can say, we can drag this in and say get the level name, and then we can set text, set text, and that's going to be this value here. Okay, now we can tidy this up at some point, or we will tidy this up at some point, but the point here is basically just to set up some various numbers and stuff to give us something on the screen, right? So that's going to be text, right? And we're going to set that to the score, right? We can obviously drag that up there. And as I said, we'll start playing with this later. And we've not put anything in the times, so we'll pull in the rating. We'll get the rating, right? And we'll set text, except this time this is going to go to the friendly version. So it's enum to string friendly version, and then this will convert to our text box name. We put that in there. We can save that, and if we go back to the designer, close that, and then we basically click on that, then that, then that, and that. Okay, we can basically set the font to that, save that, and now if we press play, in theory there is our numbers. Okay, now the interesting one we want to do here is for each of these we want to say fill, and we want to say 20. That's going to keep that the same. So we save that, press play, okay, now that's being all compressed, and that's because our high scores, you'll notice it's pretty small, right? So what we want to do is do that, right? But we'll do an offset for the top of 600 and an offset from the right of 650 and an offset of the left of 50, and off the bottom we're going to say 50 as well, right? And then our score is basically going to use all of that. I'm going to say 0 and 0. Save that. Okay. So now you'll notice that our stuff is looking good. Okay. Now, the interesting thing here is that we can extend this further, right? By basically saying data table, and we're going to get data table row, right? And it's going to come from the levels. Okay. And this value here is going to go in right. We're going to say two string, and then we're going to plug it in here, right? Then this is going to go in here, and then we're going to drag out of here and break this, and now we actually have a name for the level. Okay. So now we're using two data tables to pick up the level names, and we're picking up the high score tables, right? So now you'll see minute stake is the level name, there's the scores, text block. That's obviously, this is too big. We probably want to wrap this in a scale box, right? Or remove this. Depends what we've got here, right? So we've got a time, a score, a rating, level name, and whether it's complete, right? Does it matter if it's complete? Probably not. But in the meantime, what we can do, just for a laugh, is when we show this widget, or rather, yeah, let's do this. We'll give another variable called parent widget, right? And that's going to be W main menu, W underscore main menu, and that's going to be expose on spawn as well. So we'll save that, and then when we event construct, we'll get this, and we'll set visibility to hidden, and we'll put this in here for now. Okay, so when we actually run this and do that, that should have been hidden, except it wasn't, and that's because we didn't set it, because I'm an idiot. Right, so in main menu, that's the Steam one, and as you'll see, we have this parent widget here. So we get a reference to self and plug it in there, save that, dismiss that, play, high scores, there we go. Okay, now we don't actually really want to do that because we don't want the Chronicles thing to disappear, right? So if you're enjoying the stream, hit like and subscribe. We're nearly at 500 subscribers, so every little click helps. And I'm going to grab a comfort break for 2 seconds or 2 minutes. So check out the description for links to the Discord and ways to support the channel on Patreon and my previous game on Steam. And I shall be right back in 2 minutes, where I'll update you on the Champions League scores. Back in a second. Don't go anywhere, guys. Hi Melee Sanchez, how you doing? We are back, and for your Champions League half-time update and full-time update, Chelsea earlier beat Salzburg 2-1. Celtic are beating Shakhtar Donetsk 1-0. Dortmund Man City is 0-0 at half-time. Sevilla beat Copenhagen 3-0. Dynamo Zagreb 0, AC Milan 1. RB Leipzig 2, Real Madrid 1. Benfica 3, Juventus 1. I think that actually puts Juventus out. PSG 4, Maccabi Haifa 1. So there is your Champions League update, and we shall get back on with it. Right, so the one thing we need now is if we look at our high score line and we look at the designer, right, what we actually want is a copy of this because we need headers, okay? So if we copy that, right, go back to our main menu, then go to designer. I really need to get rid of that. Right, well what we can do is we can paste that, and that's going to give us our headers, right? And then we can basically put in the header values, right? So we get level name, then we get score. Now we can obviously format these a bit different, like we could have a background colour of red so that that's obvious that these are actually our headers. And that's weird. Mighty entered something in chat which I can see on one screen but I can't see on the other for some reason. Don't ask me why, no idea. It's all a bit of a mystery to me. But what we can do here is do text rating, and this is going to be rating, and this is going to be complete, except we'll spell it properly. And what we can actually do here is probably have we'd probably need to stick a border on each of these. Right? Because I don't think there's a background colour. Well, there's got to be a background colour, hasn't there? At least you would think so. Right? But anyway, let's go back to our main. It's not our main, it's our high score. Right? So we've got our horizontal box, right? And then what we can do is we can add a spacer, which is in primitive, right? And we can just give it like an XY. So we can give it a Y of, let's say, 5, and that just gives you a little bit of, yeah, that'll do. Right, so we can do that. And now you'll notice that we've got our thing. Okay. Now what we could do is we could wrap these in a scale box, right? But obviously at the moment our VB score thing, this panel is too big, right? So we need an offset right of, let's say, 750. Very possibly. And that's still a bit big. Right? But what we want to do is we want to get this looking a bit better. So what we'll do is we shall wrap this with a border. Right? Then we shall select the border and content, we don't change that, but we do change this. Okay, that's 110, that's fine. So I don't know if I can do this or not, but we'll try. Wrap with a border, and that did work. So what we can do now is select each of these borders and then change this colour to red. Okay, so we can save that, we can play that, and now you can see that we've got our different little things. And then what we could do is, we don't really need to do it for these, but we do need to do it for the individual high score lines, is we can select all of these, right, and we can wrap them with a scale box. And you'll notice that now but our problem is that these aren't quite right, and that's because I think that we need to select our scale boxes, and those are set to fill 20. Right? Yeah, these are set to fill 20. So that would suggest that our high scores, each border should be set to 20 as well. Which they are. That's weird. Ah, we have padding. Padding becomes an issue. So we want to make sure that there's 0 padding, and in the same instance we need to make sure that our high score lines have no padding either. They don't seem to have them. And our scale box, no padding, and test that. This is still being, they're not aligning to the left, or it appears they aren't. Yeah, see that? So we shall select all of these, align them to the left, and this is the ones in the high score line, and we want to go back to the high scores and make sure that these are the same. Okay, and they're certainly now in line. Everything's all in line, which is excellent. Right, now the thing here is we need to go back to our main menu, click on this, right, and if, right, so this is CP main. So fundamentally when I do this, right, we get the parent widget, then we get CP, get CP main, and then this is the thing that we make invisible. Okay, so now we should still be able to see our Chronicles thing, and there we go. Now the next thing is to actually work out which ones we want to actually use and which ones not. Hi Pooh Bell. Strangely, a lot of the text isn't coming through on my end here. Right, I've refreshed it and we can see them now. Hi Pooh Bell, how you doing? Maite Sanchez, hi to you as well. Right, so now we've made a high score table, right? Which is all great. And now we really need to implement it into the rest of our system, even though this isn't quite right yet either. Right, what we'll actually do is we'll fill this out. Right, we'll stop this for now. We'll go high score line. We'll go to the code. And we're going to stop that for now. And the next thing we're going to do right, we've got the level name. Did we get, I don't think we got the rating, did we? Yeah, we did. We got the rating. The time we didn't do anything with, so let's do something with the time. Right, I just want to have a look at this to see how it's going to actually look. So we're going to say text. We're going to set text. Right, and we're basically going to set this to the time. Now I'm just wondering what, so we've got hours and minutes, that's fine. Right, so that's perfect. All we need to do is say append. Now I know you can do this slightly differently, but we're just going to do it like this, and we're going to add a pin. And what the only thing we really want is minutes and seconds. right? And we can plop this in here, and then that in there. And the only thing now is we're using the level name. The only thing we're not doing is level complete. So we'll set that, except we don't. Text complete, we'll get that. Then set text, right? And we are probably going to be doing this again in the short term, right? And that's going to be going in there. Then we're going to be doing a branch, so that's going to go in there, and then that's going to go in there. That's if we can manage to join them up like so, and like so, and we're going to say yes, and we're going to say no, and we're going to be dragging from here to here. And tidy this up at some point, but that's going to give us all of our values. You can see we've got 0, 0. Complete, yes, blah de blah, everything's good. Okay, we can stop that, and obviously this is wrong. Save that. There we go. And I believe, I think what we can do here is there's a way I can't remember exactly off the top of my head right now, but there's a way you can just do it to a certain number of values. Like in standard, normal, everyday, you would do like a format or something, but that doesn't seem to be available to us. But there is a command that does the same thing, but I just can't remember exactly what it is right now. Anyway, we have our thing running. Okay, looking good, I would say. Right, but we obviously need a back button. Of some description here. Right, so if we go to here and if we go to our credits, right, we've got this button here. We can copy that then go back to our high scores, go to the designer, right? Now, what we could do, and probably the way we're going to have to do this, is actually adding another vertical box. Right? And then at the end of this vertical box, so let's just do this, right? So we'll wrap this in a vertical box. Okay? And let's see how it looks. Now, that's going to be fill, etc. Now that still looks exactly the same, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to paste our button at the end of this, right? And that looks awesome, right? But it doesn't look awesome enough as far as I'm concerned. Right, that has to be 0. That has to be 0. Then we shall OK that. And our button we don't want it to be particularly huge. There we go. Right, and now all we need to do is program the button to take us back, is to basically bring us out of there. Right, so what we can do is we can click on the button close, right, and on clicked, right, we get our parent widget, then we get CP main, and then we set visibility to visible, right, and then we remove from parent ourselves. Okay, so we save that. So we go high scores, close, high scores, close. Okay, we're going to stop that. We're going to go to our high scores, designer, And what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this, right, but we're going to drag it above the close so that we've got a definite amount of space between the close, and we'll say 25 on that, and that brings the close away so it's not too close. Basically, let's not try and be technical about it. I just don't want this close button right up against it, right? And we can also probably put a high scores up here. Okay. And that is going to work beautifully. Right, now what we actually want is copy that again and do it for our options, right? Because you'll notice if we go to options, there's kind of no way back. Right? So what we want to do is we want to look at our options, and somewhere in here is where we want our, actually it's in this canvas panel, right? So if we duplicate or paste this, we've got our thing here, right? And then what we can do is we can zero that, we can zero that, then we can drag it inside and up a bit, size it to content, now we could move it, right, well we'll do it there and see what that does. Right, yeah, I'm kind of buying that, guys. I'm buying that. You guys buying that? I'm buying it. So if we click on the button on clicked, well, we can remove from parent as the first thing, and then we can say create widget main menu, then add to viewport, then remove this from parent, and do we have a controller? I'm bound to have a controller on this. Alright, so we can do that. So now we go to options, close, we're back to here. Credits, it's got to close. Play games doesn't obviously need that. Right, we've got it there. And we have everything pretty much working. Excellent. And now, the thing we need to do is go to our menu controller and go to our game instance and such, and basically work out what we need to set up. In our instance and save game regarding like this, and this. So basically when we're setting up the game, this part here, we're creating default save game. Right? So when we're creating the default save game, we need high scores. Okay, and that's going to be high scores. And it's going to be an array. Okay. And then in our instance, we're going to do exactly the same thing. And this is player scores, so we're going to change this to high scores and save that. And now when we're doing this, we are also going to create well, it appears we're already doing it. Yep, we're already doing it. So we're probably going to have to delete our save game and recreate it. We're going to have to check to see if we're actually, I must believe that in here we are actually setting our high scores here as well. Yeah, we are. Right, so it looks like all our high score stuff is being done. We're already set it up, which is awesome, obviously, because I don't need to do it again now. Right, but we will need to set it up again. Right, so basically what you do is, if we come into Unreal Projects and we go to our Chronicles, then we go to so this is our project files, right? Got our plugins, content, etc., which is this here. the save game is in saved. Now all these other things like your auto saves, this is where you can actually go back and get, sometimes you can basically save work if you have a crash, etc, etc. And you've got your config files, which is where, well, don't know what that actually is in regard to save games, but anyway, the actual save games is in here, right? So this is the name of my save game, and that's the name I give it, Chronicles of a Vampire Hunter, right? So if we delete that, it is always a good idea when you've changed a lot of settings is to delete this and get it to recreate itself, right? Now you should have code in there to already do that, right? So for example, in my menu, right, that's another little, not worry about that, right? But we'll go to here, you'll say, does the save game exist with that name? And if it doesn't, then you create a save game when you first basically install the game and the player first runs it. If it already exists, then you just basically load it up from there, right? But in the first instance, you need to create the save game in the first place so that you can write it, okay? So what you'll see here is there's nothing in here right now, okay? But if I press play, okay, now I've not pressed any of the buttons other than play. I didn't interact with the menu, but we can now see that this file has been created for us, right? Now that's going to get created when you actually install the game as well. So it'll install to the default directory for the save game, so it's always going to be able to find that. Okay. So basically we now have our default values getting created in our save game, right? And we're pulling them from data tables, but we're only going to update them from either, like, if a new high score comes up, we'll update the save game, right? But we're obviously never going to pull the default values ever again, right? So the interesting thing there was that in our controller we actually have, or sorry, in our instance, or do we have it in our instance? Yeah, we do, right? This part here, right? Now remember I told you at the start of this, this isn't going to get pulled from the data table. This is going to get pulled from the instance, right? But we do need to write it to the instance first. And now, if we actually look at this, right, we don't need to pull it from this instance anymore, right? Sorry, we don't need to pull it from this data table anymore. Okay, what we can do, and what we normally do in this case, is we set up a widget, and that widget is going to be PCMM controller, right, which is this one here, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to delete this. So we're no longer pulling this from a data table, right? Our data table is already going to be used to basically set up our saved game. And we're going to pull from our saved game to set up our instance, right? And in effect, in actual fact, we don't need to do that. All we do, yeah, we do. There is one more thing we need to do to keep it all kind of the same, is get player controller, then we cast it to PC Chronicles. And if you're wondering, PC player controller main menu, okay, for anybody wondering why it's called that, that's basically the way I name it stuff, right? And we're going to say set the controller, and it's going to be that, and the controller already has an instance set up, right? So we're going to hide our CP main, but then we're going to drag in our controller, we're going to get it, and then we're going to say instance, and this is already the correct instance, which is GI Chronicles, okay? So we're going to say high scores, okay? Then we're going to say for each, and we're going to pop that in there and in there, and our struct coming out is exactly what we need to plug it in there. So now we're not pulling it from a data table anymore, we're pulling it from the actual instance, which is now going to be correct, okay? And it's the instance that we're going to use to create the save game, and vice versa. So when we get back to here, basically, if everything is as expected, our high score table is perfect. Okay, so let me explain this one more time. Okay, we're using our DT high scores as basically the defaults, okay, but we only use them once, and that once is to create our default save game, okay? So when we first start the game, if we don't have a save game, we create the default save game, okay? And the default saved game uses our high score data table to create those variables in the save game. Hi Legend, how you doing? The day's been good. We have basically got done what we wanted to get done, and it's all working perfectly. So as I said, when we create the save default game, we pull from the data table, and that is the only time we do that. So it only ever gets done once. Well, not strictly true, but it only ever gets done when there is no save game, okay? So basically when this folder is empty and does not have this, then it will create the new save game. And it will use the data table to create that. But once it has done that once, we bypass it and load our default high score table from the actual save game slot, right? Along with the gameplay settings, the audio settings. You can see these getting pulled here, then they get plugged into the instance, and then we can access them from any level, anywhere. Okay? And what that relates to basically is we've got a high score table, right? But now this is not being pulled at all from a data table. It's getting pulled from the save game, which gets fed into the game instance, and we read it from the game instance, okay? So just to show you that what I'm saying is actually true, in theory, if we change our DT high scores, okay, so if we change this score to, let's say, 550,000, okay, what we'd expect to happen is nothing, right? Because we're no longer reading this. Okay, so if I go to high scores, 500,000 doesn't exist, right? But here's where the fun starts. But if I delete this, which is our save game, right? If I delete that, and then we'll save this just to make sure. And now if I do that, if I click on high scores, there is my 500,000. That is because it has loaded the scores again from the data table and used them to set up the default save game. Okay, so you can now see that this has been created again, and it's been created with this value instead of the last value, because obviously we've updated it, right? But again, to show you that if I update this value again to 9999, save that, you will notice that nothing changes, right? It's still 500,000. And nothing will change unless I delete this, okay? So, there is how you get and use data tables for default values and then use them to set up your save game, okay? So hopefully that's been helpful. I'm sure it has. And you will notice that we are still logged into Steam, I believe. Yep, Steam is running. Okay. So you will notice that if I run this as a standalone game, remember, as before, we've set up two different versions of the high score table, right? So you've seen my Steam thing come up, and there's Steam there. And now if we select high scores, we get a picture. Okay? We don't get the high score table, right? And that's because we're going to do, remember, two different things depending on whether our subsystem is actually active or not. Okay? So that code is obviously here. If our subsystem is online and it's called Steam, then we show this widget, and if it's not, we show this widget. Okay? And hopefully that has helped you guys, or at least given you some pointers on the way to start off solving these types of problems, or not problems, but just little coding parts that you need to do, right? So now we're pretty functional 100% of the, well, I would say about 95% of the way as far as the menus go. Right, obviously if we now do this, subsystem is not online because we're in the editor, so we get our actual high scores. Right, we're obviously going to replace the picture with something like this, but it being connected to Steam, right? And then you're obviously going to have like friends, all, whatever, blah blah blah, right? But until we've actually got a Steam leaderboard to play with, there's not a lot I can do about that. But in the meantime, if you support the channel through Patreon, we can put that towards a key for this particular game and actually get it on Steam. And then we can show you, or I can show you, how you set up Steam and like Steam achievements and all that sort of stuff. Okay? But we are kind of stuck for the moment on the Steam stuff because it looks like Space Wars doesn't have a leaderboard, so we can't even kind of test it. But anyway, so I think that's going to do for today actually, because that really finishes off a lot of our kind of touch-up work on the menus, because we've now got the back button and the close button on this. We've got our high scores and it closes. Credits, we've got a close button. By the way guys, the credits, you can get your name on here by supporting on Patreon. These are my two supporters so far. You can get your name on there if you like. And exit game obviously doesn't need to do anything, but we can now navigate through all the menus. For those who haven't seen it, I haven't showed this off a lot, but you'll notice now that when we go up to, we have blended in the name of the level, right? And that's blended into the material, right? We're using our procedural bookcase here, so you'll notice it's got lots of spaces and stuff, which is pretty cool. And we can actually enter a level if we want by hitting the interact button. Okay, and you can see here that we have our pickups. We have our brake. And we can run about in our room basically. Now, there's one thing I know that isn't quite working yet, which is basically our mini map pickups and our other pickups are being counted towards pickups, which they shouldn't be, which I'm going to sort, I would say, probably tonight. But otherwise, our game is working well. And basically is totally functional. Right, I actually, believe it or not, I actually used the map there. Right, that's the end of a line. That's the end of a... Now, the interesting thing is, where are... Ah, here we go. Now, you can see that that music only plays once. So, we're going to need to do something with that. Right, now, there is a bad guy about here somewhere, by the way. And I think the bad guys are going to be, it's going to be dependent on how you set the difficulty. Like the higher the difficulty, the more bad guys there'll be, right? And possibly the harder it is to keep your pickups. At the moment it's ridiculous, it's just like 4 seconds between, right? But I can change that, so down to like maybe 2 seconds or something. So if you don't pick up something for 2 seconds, it resets. Right, now there's a teleporter. And we're back at the start. Right, now our music isn't looping. Right, it's either that or we're going to do something about the music where we get a list, and basically when a piece of music finishes, then we select another piece of music, I would say. Now, the game definitely works from the point of view that I am actually, when I pick up, like when I do the pickups, it's definitely working. I definitely do get faster, right? It isn't crazy. It isn't crazy speeds, right? But you do oh, there's a bad guy. Okay, so that gives me an idea straight away, right? God, he's fast. Right, here you see he's moving. Now, I think we need I think he's too bleeding fast, that's what I think. I can't get away from him. I've got away from him, I think. Right. So what we needed there was some chase music. We need like an ambush when suddenly you meet a bad guy. But I can see if you're playing this in the dark, this would actually, you would get a fright there. Especially if we did like a music thing. That would have definitely been a scary moment. Right, so we're at 156. And you'll notice that when I actually pick these up, okay, we're going to have to go back because we're just going to have to do some tidying up with and there you go, it jumped back. Now there's still some there. Now I believe that's because some of the pickups were set to be mini maps and stuff. Now we shouldn't be adding them to the list of the pickups that you need to pick up, right? So the number of pickups should be all the speed pickups and not the minimap pickups and not the stun pickups, right? Now I believe that the best way to do this, especially for the stun pickups, would be that you use a button to stun, right? And that would mean that obviously if you pick up a stun and there's no monsters anywhere near you, it's going to be kind of crap to have used it, right? Whereas if you use your stun, you know, when you're near a monster and you're trying to get away, obviously if you've got one, right? So I think we'll implement that tonight, right? And we shall check out what making sure the count does not include any of the other pickups, i.e. mini-maps and stuns, right? So that gets back to be working exactly as expected. So with that, guys, I am going to give you a quick update on the Champions League scores. So we have Chelsea having beat Salzburg, Celtic drew 1-1 with Shakhtar Donetsk, Man City drew with Dortmund in Dortmund 0-0, Sevilla beat Copenhagen 3-0, AC Milan beat Dynamo Zagreb in Zagreb by 4 goals to 0, RB Leipzig 3, Real Madrid 2, Benfica 4, Juventus 3, I believe Juventus are out, and PSG 7, Maccabi Haifa 2. And with that, guys, I'm going to call it there. So if you've enjoyed the stream, hit like and subscribe, and check out the description for links to the Discord and for ways to support the channel and the development of the game. And for $5 you can get your name in the credits of the game, and they get shown every stream. And also my other game on Steam, which is called FTD2, which is a tower defense game. So thank you all for watching. I shall see you tonight at 8 PM Central, and bye bye for now.